I want to be me. Okay. And I have to recognize what's influencing me. The news, the like other people's opinions. So like here, like there was, I think I heard this one. So there's three ways of acquiring knowledge. Like this could be wrong or this could be right. What you intuit, like my intuition, what you learn from direct experience or gnosis, and what other people say. Okay. The two of the things are pretty much subjective in a way. You know, intuition can be very subjective, and your own experience can be subjective because you have a perception, and then that perception has to establish that through words and communication, and then
Mm-hmm.
explain that to someone
And it's
else.
filtered by
Yeah,
your.
through their it's filtered through their perception, and they have to then acknowledge it. So there's a different thing. So that's a very those first two are very personal, but then again, establishing other people's perspective on you is another way of influencing other than the first two ways of acquiring knowledge. And that's like a spiritual gymnastics or something like that. You have to like lay out. So what I mean by exuding positivity, it's not like I'm like some weak guy. Is that I really want to just be myself and be vulnerable.
Hello.
Vulnerable.
Hello. This is Chris Jansen. This is the End Evil podcast and show, and I'm here today with a friend Nathan Ribble, who's come to join me. And I invited Nathan specifically because I know he's a good technical minded person and very intelligent. And I met him in the True Media class in Mark Passio's class, and so I was kind of impressed with his skills and everything. And so we decided to have a conversation about technology. So welcome, Nathan, and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you for being on this call here. So yeah, like a lot of the things that I've learned through the Mark Passio's class, actually, his True Media course was really helpful. I feel like that really highlighted a lot of really good things that I've learned over the course of many years. So really, where I feel like this really lands is a lot of the things that Mark talked about were just so good and so juicy to the point where I even learned things at the very basic level. So really what I'm telling about is, I've been kind of developing technology all my life, and most of it really stems from my dad and how he really, he was in IT at a very like back in 2000, he got certified to do Microsoft technician stuff, and he pretty much went off from there. So even for pretty much before I was born, he was using computers, and it was just a normal thing. It really didn't really take off as much in my life early on, but I feel like I had a really wholesome life, and I really think that contributed to that because then I have a really differentiating um, kind of lifestyle to where I have that one foot in like I live with I live in the outdoors, I live outside, and at the same time I'm really it really matters to me that really part of myself. At the same time, technology really helps me, and I've really grown into technology. I started on Windows 95, you know, got my first Dell computer, Windows 2003 series, and then I started on Windows computers ever since. And so it was you can define me as your higher than average user with a computer with that. So I feel like that from there, it transitions into everything that's new with technology and everything that I've used even in school. So yeah, I think
How
that.
old were you when you got your first like computer to play with?
Oh man, I must
You
have
remember?
been I must have been probably 10 years old or
Let's
11.
see. There's part of the
So
show right there.
yeah, so
Yeah.
I feel like 11 years old, like the first thing
Yeah.
was, my dad gave me my first email address. That was the best thing. And I feel like email addresses was like, all right, who am I going to email? And I realized this later. I'm just like, okay, I opened up my email, and my brother, he's a little younger than me, so he also got his first computer right around the
Mm-hmm.
time at the same time I did. And he has gone way farther than I have when it comes to technology and stuff. He does a lot of Linux computing stuff. He's actually a programmer. He actually gets paid to do a lot of the stuff and web developing and a lot of web services. Um, so an experience that I had, which is kind of funny, was when we go over to the computer, and it takes a while for it to load and everything like that. So once I finally got my nice background, I got the music I want to play. We open up the email, and we're like, why is this taking so long? And it says it's loading 3,000 emails. And I'm like, where did all these emails come from? So it's a little funny thing, and we try to, like, diagnose some issues that we have, and it was just always something like, I always had my dad to go to, but at the same time, he would always make us do it. So the thing that I feel like that really helped me learn was taking it one step at a time, and it really was just that easy. They made computers back then. It was like an old 2005 Dell. I don't know, Dell computer tower, the really big ones that they have. And they color code everything nowadays. So back then, okay, where do the speakers go? And it was they
Mm-hmm.
color coded the cord with the end of
Sure. Yeah.
the thing. And it was just like the old games, the when you're a kid, you get those little
Like
block.
Nintendo. Yeah.
Oh, I was gonna say, like, the Nintendo. Okay, yeah, the Nintendo has to go a certain way, but even
Mm-hmm.
further, when you're like a toddler, you have these block games. You have the square. The square goes in the square hole. You have the
Oh
circle. The
right.
circle goes in the circle hole. So it's honestly, it translates all the way up till you're adults and even further. So I figure, nowadays it's like, okay, how do you have the certain plugs that go in the right thing, so they go and they connect in the right places. So that was really like a pivotal time, as I grew into that, video games, like you mentioned, video games, that was a pretty decent part of my life. Got into technology that way. And I even talked to my dad about this. I'm like, hey, Dad, why didn't you get into video games? And he said it was not in his time. Like, his time was, or like I said, early 2000s. And
Mm-hmm.
then he started getting into computers, or like right around the internet boom kind of thing started happening. Like, he knew about Doom, like when it started happening, kind of thing. That was the first video game that was
Doom. I remember
like,
Doom.
yeah, pretty mainstream. I'm not that far into a Doom. I'm still like a like millennial baby kind of thing.
Wasn't it
But
like Wolfenstein, the one before that? I think.
yeah, yeah. That
Yeah,
was
I
that was
remember
pretty
that.
heavily like mainstreamed video game, like, started coming up to, graphics were pretty
Mm-hmm.
good. Things were starting to pick up things. I don't really know much history about a lot of that, but I figure, you know, the revolution kind of different graphics really picked up after 2000, and it accelerated until then. And video games came out, consoles came out. It went from transforming the home experience, actually came back out into computers again, because it went pretty much full circle for me. So, like, I knew about computers, and I knew that they existed, but I felt like, I felt very excited about, you know going and exploring adventures on, like, a very real life looking simulated, video game. And so from there, I realized, I'm like, wow, I'm spending my a lot of time on video games. And then when I got into high school, it sort of tapered off and, sort of stopped. And from there, I just kind of let it all go. I started hanging out with my friends more. Yet at the same time, I'm like, I need a computer, kind of thing. I started realizing the needs for a computer to start out back in 2010, 2011. And that's when I got my other laptop. I got my own personal, like, laptop that was, better than the old tower that I had. That thing was not feeling good after so long. So
Mm-hmm.
after that, I feel like, college really turned on to, an amazing part of, like, technology, which I feel like this is a pretty relevant moment here, was, how technology accelerated my actual academics, which in compulsory schooling, you get the, diagnostics of ADD and ADHD and learning disabilities,
Right.
and all of those different disabilities, dyslexia, speech impediments, different things, even cerebral palsies, for once. It's any way that you can't actually learn how to actually, learn to write, read, or speech. So if there's anything inhibiting you doing that, they'll diagnose you with a disease, like a learning
Right.
disability. And that falls under a general term called learning disabilities, or LD. And so they comprised me, as they put me in a little box called, I have an IEP, which I still don't know to this day what that means, a learning impairment. And they gave me extra time on my tests, so they put me in different classrooms, and they gave me
Hmm.
different curriculum and stuff like that. This is the special education part of high school that they would put in people. And even, I was even all the way back till when I was in third grade. And I'm like, why do I have to go to this part of the school? But I enjoyed it. Really, it was just like a stimulus, kind of like stimulates the mind better. It was like a different form of learning, in my opinion. So when it comes to, like, no, I'm not retarded, but at the same time, like, I have a different way of learning. Like, I wasn't always, focused, and they still put me on medication, and a lot of times that did help, but at the same time it just wasn't always there. So growing into this, it was just how putting things together, like again, like I'm putting things together, and it was really stimulating my mind. I did a lot of puzzles, I did a lot of card games. It wasn't like traditional learning, like that people, you sit in front of the class and you get lectured. A lot of that was still there, but it wasn't, always there. So when I got into college, the specific college I went to was because I had a learning disability. And
Hmm.
so I went to the college, and they did their best. They honestly, like, if I had a different shot at it, I would have gone back to school, which is, it's a high, not many people would say that, but especially this school, it was the ideal environment for me to actually learn. And I did learn something. I actually learned to love reading again.
Did you have like a particular area of study?
I personally didn't, because I actually did not have enough credits to continue on with, or I don't know if I actually got into the point where I could do college grade courses yet. So
Oh,
I
I
did
see.
what they said pre-college.
Yeah,
So I would
the
have had to,
general, right?
yeah, I would have had to done an extra year if I were to finish anything. But I actually dropped out of my second year. So this was one of these. It's hard to believe, but I was actually in a school called Landmark College. It's in Putney, Vermont, and this is apparently a school that is the highest, like the largest tuition in all of private schools. And I'm like, I had you have to have a learning disability on record by a medical practitioner and get retested. I had to do all this stuff when I was a senior, and then I got in. I had to get all these subsidies and all these different things, but really what I'm getting at is this school was meant so that you can learn. And so because I was diagnosed and all these other things, they gave me actual technology. And this is an interesting point. So they gave me three different programs, so like software. So I had my computer, like I said, in 2011. I went to college in fall of 2012. They gave me a program to scan my documents and then scan it into the computer, and then it will optical character read the actual words and read it back to me in a specific way. So if I have a hard time reading, I can actually
Hmm.
listen to the actual textbook instead of me reading the textbook. And so I find that that was an amazing point of me actually, like, ingesting so much information. And that goes into audiobooks and different ways of learning. And so I feel like audiobooks, lectures, interviews,
That,
different ways
for
of
me,
learning.
the podcasts and audiobooks were
Hmm.
like a major breakthrough.
Yeah.
I had years of like I really like reading, and I'm actually good at reading and speaking. And
Hmm.
even as a kid, like I learned to read upside down. I remember it tripped out my family. They were like, "How
Wow.
can you do that?" Because I would look over when my sister was reading, and I could read things upside down. And but the thing is, for me, like here's the issue I have.
Hmm.
Um, when you start like getting into research of conspiratorial type things
Mm.
or deeper understanding of what's going on in the world, who's running things, I come across this technocratic, um, technotronic agenda, right? Like
Hmm.
where a lot of these elite rulers of the world, whoever's manipulating, um, they basically want to turn us into computers in so many ways because
Hmm.
people without emotions are easier to control.
Right.
And there's an agenda afoot. And I guess even before I discovered those things, like much younger, even though I was exposed to computers pretty young, I remember being in like a class with the old Apple computers that are all one thing and learning basic, when I was like,
Hmm.
probably what you were saying, like around 10 or something, with the just green screen, black screen with the green letters. And but I like started resisting it real bad. Like I saw it as
Hmm.
materialism, almost like when I was young, I almost thought of materialism and all this computers and all this stuff as bad or evil or something,
Hmm.
you know. And so I really pushed it out of my life a lot, especially as I got growing up, and I like didn't really care that much about the computer. I feel like it just would waste my time when I would sit down in front of it. And so I was like really focused on trying to be outdoors and do like physical things, and that's part of why I
Right.
stuck with construction work. And in my mind, it's like one day they could just turn off all the power, and all that stuff you guys did would be useless, And so then I've had to kind of come back around, and what brought me back around was partly in a lot of ways, Mark Passio, and explaining that, if that's where people are at and we want to reach
Yeah.
people, that's where we got to do it. That's where the battle's happening. And so I've sort of had to like push myself into trying to do this computer stuff, and it's still
Yeah.
frustrating for me. So that's kind of why I thought it'd be interesting to have your point of view, where we're coming from like almost the opposite end of the spectrum in a way. And
Yeah.
it is a battle. It's like it's a double edged sword, right?
I agree, and with that, it's there's just so much information. So when it comes to the like again audiobooks and all these different things, there are just so many people creating this kind of content. How do you differentiate all this kind of stuff? And it's to the point where I just had to keep learning and learning and learning. Like mind you, I still listen to all of his podcasts, all of his lectures. That's a lot of content to listen to. I had to listen to this stuff for like 6 to 9 months, and so being and listening was pretty much an optimal thing for me. So again, like when it comes to technocratic, there's definitely a blend of both. So like I can't sit here after this. I'm probably gonna go for a walk, and I can't just sit in this chair all day. And
Oh,
trust me, like
transhuman. That's the other word I was trying to think of. It's
yes,
been
a
called the
transhuman,
transhuman
because
agenda,
it's
right?
like again there was a subject that came up, and this is something interesting. So it's a subject called biohacking, and a lot of the stuff that we are accustomed to having is like, okay, like if pretty much anything could be a biohack. Okay, look, most things could be a biohack. A car is a biohack. Sunglasses are biohacking. And when it comes to, we get better headphones. These headphones are altering the way we actually hear things. It's coming through a computer, thousands of miles across the country, and into our ears. When it comes to things like, okay, interactions, a lot of like there's always the point at which where how impactful is this? Would it be better if we it would be like a million times better if we could actually have a conversation. Yet it actually saves us so much like energy and time to actually have a conversation on a screen like this. Yet we can still be, we can mediate the time that we have. We don't have to constantly be on a conversation. We don't have to have one every single day. We can have our schedule. We can save our time in such a way, like instead of flying out there, having a conversation, staying there for a week, and then having a one-on-one conversation and recording it. And I figure when it comes to things like getting together, it's yes, there's moments of which we can save our privacy and have offline in real life conversations. That's really where I feel like that's the medium. I don't use Facebook anymore. No, nobody, like most of my friends don't use Facebook anymore. The only reason why they do is just to push their own like either content or events that they have, and it really matters to me to follow in that suit. An experience I had at the end of my college experience was like, I'm looking at Facebook. I'm like, I don't like any of this stuff. Why do I like South Park and McDonald's? Like, what do they have in my life? It's just a corporate thing. So I went into my Facebook at the time when I still had it, still was like an avid user. I purged all the things I didn't like, and it was just before like knew any about this Mark Passio stuff, conspiracy stuff, and I really just didn't like any of this stuff. And I'm like, okay, now what? I started liking all the things that I did like. I started looking into different things like a lot of new age subjects that I was into at the time. I started looking into things about personal development, meditation, learning about the self, and a lot of that stuff transitioned into other websites, which then synchronistically happened to connect me. One thing led to another. It's like is how I like to coin it. Is one thing led to another. Then I found Mark's work. It
Mm-hmm.
kind of systematically found its way all the way from taking a tool that of the technocratic state, which I still feel that Facebook is, and transitioning it from instead of them acquiring something from me, which they still are. It's from me to reach out and actually ingest what I truly do want. And so when it comes to that, I feel like there's either again a balance of both. Getting the other skeptical side of things at the same time as getting what you want out of something and leaving the rest.
Yeah, yeah. Facebook. It's funny you bring that up because that's been a big love hate thing for me.
Hmm.
I've had a long time, and I've said it to people over and over, and they scoff at me. But I'm going to differentiate here. This isn't truth. This is my theory. I've had this
Hmm.
sort of intuition feeling from the beginning. It makes more sense to me that Facebook was created by some sort of think tank, CIA, deep
Hmm.
state
DARPA.
programming. They created this whole thing, and then they chose this doofus Zuckerberg to jump in there and be in charge of it. And yeah, maybe he had some idea, or maybe he started something, and maybe he's really smart, but he didn't make Facebook. From my
Mm,
point of view, I just don't buy it. It just, to me, logically thinking, tactics, it just makes a lot more sense that this whole thing was funded and created by a deep state program, right? So I've always tried to make that point as long as I've been in there. And but nevertheless, I've used Facebook over the years because old friends are there, and there's some people on there I
mm,
kind of want to keep touch with that I don't necessarily talk to that often. And I've had some really unique experiences. And when I started doing podcasting, I wound up getting together with old friends, people from other states, even a friend from Germany, listened to a show I made and wound up visiting me on his trip to the US. And that would have never happened had it not been for Facebook. And I finally had the idea one time, like, oh, I need to reach out to other people that like the What on Earth is Happening show. Maybe there's a
mm.
Facebook group about that. It came to me like a flash. And then now I met all these wonderful people and friends that I know really close, and people I even know in person and meet face to face with through Facebook. So as much as I want to hate it for being a tool of, what I see as the deep state, I've used it to find true friends and find great people. So there's my example of your exactly what you're saying. So
Right,
as far
right.
as activism, I'd like to hear your point of view on activism. What is activism that works or doesn't work, and how does that tie into this technology discussion?
Yeah. So
What do
I
you
think
think?
the answer it's pretty much this going about activism in a modern age. It really is something to go about, using the modern technology of the age. So a lot of times, you can see what's in history. A lot of times what has happened in the past has pretty much worked the best way. You go as far as you can with the technology. And so what that really means is, you use the technology that's available. And so back in the day when, paper was movable, they used paper to, at at the time proselytize the Bible and they get their message out and have the Bible be done. Now in America, and further in America, they printed the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, and they spread it far and wide, and they spread news that way. And that was a pretty pivotal moment in history. And I feel like this is also a very pivotal moment in history. The internet wars, that some people would call, or I don't know what it's called these days. It could be anything. And there's a phrase that people pretty much know: the revolution will not be televised,
Hmm.
but I believe it will be streamed.
Hmm.
And so that's our thing, to actually use the technology to its advantage and stream the revolution from there. So when it comes to common activism, I can't say anything else.
And that's pretty much the only thing I've used social media for is to try to um, reach out to folks and be like, hey, what about this? What about truth? What about freedom? And and I think that doesn't work for me very well though,
Hmm.
because I mostly wind up reaching other people like yourself, which is great. I've made a lot of friends, but as far as reaching the people that need to hear that message, they're clicking on cats and funny naked jokes and
Hmm.
silly stuff just to entertain their mind to get through the night. And if they see something like what I'm doing, they're like,
Right, right.
and I'm not showing up on their feed and I'm not getting into their ear. So I don't know. What do you think? How do we go about
Yeah,
getting to more ears and more eyes?
yeah. When it comes to finding out those types of people, like they really go about, there's a happy medium when it comes to about the common, I would say, Facebook scroller, to get them away from their screens. It's something, again, it's either my job to do that, which I feel very obligated to do, to wake up these people and to realize that, their freedom's on the line, which it truly is. There's nothing else way to say it, no other way to say it. And when it comes to that, there's a lot of people out there that could do the teaching, and a lot of people like us. We are the teachers of our own circles, and so we've been taught by people before us. Like many people in antiquity, from far beyond. We've learned from their philosophy. We stand on the shoulders of giants, And in modern day, the people that are alive, they've done a lot of things for us already. They've set the ground rules. They've set the sort of proverbial battleground. They've let it be known that we're in this modern technological spiritual war for many reasons. It's an unseen war. And when it comes to that, I feel like then a lot of times I reach out to someone, it's again immediately shut down, but it's about meeting people where they're at the same time as pushing that boundary. It's like, okay, if I'm in, say, if I knew this person, I knew someone for 5 years, and he's now, you know, way far away from conspiracy land than I am, I'd just be like, hey, look, like, there's personal sovereignty. Have you ever heard of Disabilities? And like I do a sort of test when it comes to anarchy. Like I go straight into it. I'm an anarchist. And so okay, what does that mean? You go throughout the process of asking him the question of what it actually means. And I could bury the story, but I feel like once I got to the point of getting him to like say, oh, I understand what you mean now. I ask him another question, and I ask him another question, and from there, it kind of it brought me to help lead my friend um, into a space where we can see eye to eye. We can see like, well, yeah, like no, I understand that the freedom, really does matter. And from there, I'm not gonna, see him next day and going out screaming out to a bullhorn. It's really a step by step process. And a lot of times, some people will bite it and grab it and utilize it for all its like suck out all the juice, and some will like either take it and in strides. And again, there's always the common person that will start running away. I won't say that doesn't exist. A lot of times I feel like, even myself, I don't go far enough. And so I feel like it's challenging myself to go even
Mm-hmm.
farther with that. So
Be a little
it's a
more courageous or brave to.
yeah, that's another thing. I'm stepping out of my boundaries every day when it comes to talking about stuff. And it's tough. Some people would say, you get off the chair, stop being an armchair quarterback and get out there. Like put my face far and wide. And yeah, even without technology too. Like the old school way was paper, and it still is valid. Like there are people out there today on the streets. We can start handing out flyers. You can start putting them in places where we can actually see, where people can actually see them, and that would either get them into a technology circle, or at least an understanding that there's something else happening. Like in some towns, no, like there's no one there to spread the truth, and the tyranny runs free. But when it comes to like we can do the Johnny Appleseed version of running through, doing a road trip and just start pasting out flyers everywhere, and that could reach a modicum of people in places where it would have never come. And so I feel like it's do everything you can with a lot of the things that you have with technology. It's again, don't let it suck up your time. That's another thing. Like you can't stay up till 3 in the morning, or if you do want to go for it, that's another thing. People are that hard on themselves, and at the same time, have a combination or a hybrid of other physical means. Get out there, get active with your community. And I feel like that's another hard thing. uh, Being hard on getting out there and being in community. I'm going out tomorrow with community, and it's going to be we're
Right
going to
on.
be inactive in communication with, learning how to actually communicate with each other in a common goal, in activism, in connecting with each other on our own things, how we can exchange goods and stuff and services in such ways. And it's all new to me. Like I don't it's a lot of this is new to me. So I feel like this is something to grow and expand on and see where maybe I am pretty hard on them. Maybe I do want to go out and shout with the bullhorn and come up with creative ways to get people out of the lines of the vaccines and into lines for fresh foods and you
And
know
sunlight
and
and fresh
sunlight,
air
right?
and breathing, it's like just goes on and on.
Yeah, without their masks this time,
I
right?
mean, that's a bit of a. I've been noticed now. Now it's just going out in public for me is almost like holding a poster, just because I'm a naked face. In a lot of places, that's like I'm the only naked face a lot of times,
Yeah,
and that's like a whole new, like you were saying, uh, challenge for bravery and courage, because it's a battle every time I go somewhere. Like, do I really want to deal with this today? It's frustrating, but it's the same thing I've noticed everywhere I go, and I can't let certain things go in a conversation. If somebody says a certain thing, if I'm there and there's someone I care about who I feel like is worth my time, I have to reply. Like for instance, when someone I know or care about starts talking about one president versus the other, I have to start trying to point out, don't you know they both work for the same people? And that it doesn't matter which one
Yeah.
wins. Don't you know that voting is ridiculous, that it'll never work and it's actually immoral because you're voting against half the population. You're trying to say you know more, or somebody should have authority over all these people. And so there's so many subjects that are difficult to talk about. And um, I think you made a good point that yeah, we can use technology, but we also have to keep a foot in the real world. So there's definitely a balance. It's like do both, right? Is kind
Yeah.
of what I'm getting from you. And then, I mean, I guess my next question would be like, you're saying you're gonna go out in public and you meet with some community, but I think one thing I've struggled with and a lot of people do is like online, you know, um, how do you how do you find your people there? How do you find who you are in
Hmm.
this real world? It's like a whole nother world, and you have to have your avatar in there, and it's like, you know,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
I,
I
I,
hear
I
you on
struggle
that.
with that. How do you find the people you want to talk to, and how do you present yourself? Do you
Yeah.
have any
So
ideas?
the ideas that really strum around is really just being I feel like just being honest with a lot of people. I personally like a lot of things like I used to be, really hidey a lot of times. Still want to keep my security on lock when it comes to being on the internet. Anything could happen on your internet. Your identity's on there, your lives are on there these days. A lot of people still have banks, a lot of people have their identities tied into the technology, and that's a part of the technocratic state, and being a all the totalitarianisms want to have your identity. So I don't really use a pen name. A lot of people do to kind of hide or shroud their names. We're both using our real names, and I feel like that's a part of okay, if I actually know the person, that's another step of finding yourself. I don't want to be a sort of avatar as you called it, and that's another step into video games or calling yourself by a username. If I'm a user, I'm not a human in any case. So when it comes to finding out my tribe, I found that common interests that I had really resonated with me. I wanted to find out more about gardening. I want to find out more about, natural foods and health food stores. So I would go to the places and go to the events that these places would have. So if I, looked up my local health food store, they had an event. They had a like a few years ago they had an anniversary sale, and it was a whole event, and that's where I would go. I'd find the places in my area that in the past had these events. Now a lot of this stuff is online, and you can find pretty much anything online, and that's again putting us back into our little cubby holes of a home. um, but the real thing that I found that um, really was successful for me was back, I don't know, a couple years ago. I discovered what Derek Rose and John Bush were doing with the Freedom Cells. And so on freedomcell.org, I started joining. It was about 2,000 to 4,000 people at the time were on their old site. And now through what's been going on with the pandemic, the increase in totalitarianism, a lot of people are going back online and learning that there are these ways of connecting, and it really stimulates the want and need, like or I should say not stimulate but advocates staying offline but at the same, like, connected online but staying on in real life to talk about these sort of situations. And so that's where I said recently that I was going tomorrow to visit these. I've been going to certain events in my local area, and it's only our little small little group so far, but I feel like once we start picking things up, it's going to get a lot warmer soon. People are going to want to go outside a lot more, and that's
That's
definitely
really
where.
cool. I've met 4 or 5 local people through
Yeah,
Freedom Cells also, and we're meeting too.
definitely. And
Awesome.
recently, there's also been a lot of anti-mask rallies,
Hmm.
anti-lockdown rallies. Like I'm in the tri-state area of New York City, so there's a lot of that,
Really?
and there's a lot of different things. And when it comes to the cold, they steered away from a lot of the colder times. But I feel like all the way throughout the summer of last year, there was a lot of active people going outside and rallying in the New York area. And I feel like that was really where a lot of people will connect. I had a lot of synchronicities around connecting with people, and I connected other people with other people, and it's still happening. I still feel like that's a real it's a real heart opener, because it's just like, the universe is around, and I'm using technology while the universe is still working with me to connect these people together. Like, it blows me away. To many months ago, I'm like, I'm in the woods at a intentional community. I'm helping out on the land, and I'm meeting some people that were from New York City. I'm like, oh, hi, how are you? And I didn't think anything of it. And I leave, and I go to a rally, and there they were. There was one of the persons that I met at this intentional community hours away, and lo and behold,
That's really cool.
there he was, and we
Yeah.
connected. We got our exchanged our phone numbers, and we're connecting all the time now. I feel like it
It's
really
like your
made it
minds were focused on the same thing and you're both drawn
right.
like a magnet, right?
Yeah, it's like one foot out there, and building the world we want to see, and at the same time is resisting the world that's so-called being, brought down upon us. And I feel like that's really again, I'm harnessing the world we live in balance. And I feel like there's a lot to that, because there is talk of the middle way when it comes to things,
Mm-hmm.
and being on balance, being in balance, but at the same time thrusting both, instead of being too swayed on one side. That's like, at least at least we're holding on to something. Like, yeah, that's like, I'm fervent with this. You don't want to be too like soft and milky in the middle. Like, if I'm like balanced, but I'm like not really doing much, it's like, you're still not doing something. So you gotta, really, what I'm saying is that, like, if I was like in the middle, a lot of times was about, okay, like, if I, masks are, they kind of help the people that need help with the masks. But then I really don't like to wear masks, so I'm not going to wear one. But, being what they call a sympathizer for a mask, it's like, you got to be one or the other. And I feel like, just don't wear it. Like, so that goes, I'm bringing that as an example because it goes for a lot of things. It's like,
I
yeah,
think
like,
there's some confusion in some people's minds, like being in the middle is like not being decisive.
I
It can
see.
be thought of that way, or it can be thought of like we're talking about, where you're very balanced, and like you were
Yeah,
talking about having one foot in both worlds, one world the
exactly. Yep.
technology and the other the real outside world, and that's kind of to me a different thing. Like brain balance, for instance, is being able to go back and forth, and one of the exercise you might do is looking left and right. You're using your right and your left hand. Those
Yeah.
things help balance you, and that's a different way of being centered than being like in the middle about things, which is like wishy-washy, right? And that's what we don't want to be, is undecisive or
Mhm.
wishy-washy.
Mhm. It's like saying you're, I really don't like technology, and then you're texting over here or something like that. It's like,
Yeah, well, and I do that. I say like I don't like Facebook, but then I use it, and I use it to find friends. So, but I think what makes the difference is principles and understanding
mhm.
principles. And I know you understand what's going on because of something you said about referring to what's going on around us as a battle or a war. And I think
Mhm.
that's where most of the population is really confused, because they don't recognize the fact that we are in a
Yeah.
battle, we are in a war.
Yeah, it's
So I'd
not
like
ball
to
and
hear.
chain slavery. It's really just, it's not ball and chain slavery. As people, what we keep saying is slavery. It's like people think that we have a collar around our neck, and there's these guys pulling at our chains. A lot of
Right.
times nowadays, I say it's a spiritual war. They reference the third eye. A lot of times, our third eye is how we see things in the world. Some people will say they're not awake. So, I have to be awake to see, right? And so a lot of people's eyes are closed, and there's this little string attached to the eye, and all of it's attached to what? Money. And a lot of times money is a thing that people are looking at. They're grasping at what they like. There's an image, it's like a man holding a mirror, and the mirror is showing a pile of cash, and it's showing the dollar sign above it, but when they think it's like the holy grail instead. And I think a lot of people are really attached at the third eye of the spiritual war. They're using all these different tactics of symbolism and money, as well as technology, in very, very interesting ways. Like, for instance, though, just again going back and forth with a lot of things, when it comes to money, there's the technology that we can actually have this abundance. When it comes to abundance, I have one foot in here, one foot out. I don't see the US dollar as anything other than a piece of paper. At the same time, I still have to use it. So I still have to use the systems to um, either buy food. And yes, there are other ways to get food. Otherwise, by growing it, it's pretty much printing your own money these days. Um, in reference to technology, crowdfunding has been an amazing avenue for people to actually explore using technology, using social outreach, and actually connecting with people for either having value or a positive message, and having potentially thousands of people fund something that holds dear to their hearts, as well as they honestly know where their money's going instead of like taxation or police theft in certain cases where their money's stolen without them knowing exactly where it's going. I can share little increments of money every month, or at least one donation, $1, $5, $10. You have a knowing of donation of where this money is actually going, and impacting someone's life dramatically.
Yeah,
And
and that is a totally a positive aspect right there, right? You
when it
know,
comes to that, yeah, the positive aspects, and I feel like that again, there's I again having to balance. This is how my mind works. I feel like it's like a word of divergent thinking, where you come up with a subject and you think of many different areas of how things are really done. I could think of another one where recently, as people are thinking, this unbelievable thing happened where someone sprayed what was it, gorilla glue in their hair, and then complained about it, and then they had a campaign on, again, a crowdfunding source to have her hair, like, fixed and stuff like that, and she got thousands of dollars for that. It's a stupid thing. Who would do that? And
yeah,
ignorance finds a way, I guess. And again, we have to find a way. And so when it comes to finances, when it comes to fundraising, when it comes to activism, we just truly got to find a way, even with technology. And so when it comes to that, like, you know you got to have technology. I feel like this is something that learning is a hard thing. Learning, it's the novelty. A lot of times we just like to be in our own little boxes, and I push myself every day, and it honestly hurts to push myself enough that I do. With all the technology, I want to learn, I want to help. Like, I have this knowledge of technology, right? Like, I've learned all the things from back with my dad. I'm still learning, I'm still talking, I'm learning, teaching my dad things. And I feel like just learning from that, I got to do something with it. I got to share my technology. I got to share my time. I got to share all these things. And even if it's in little increments and stuff like that, like if I help a greater amount of people, and at the same time, develop myself, going out there, seeing the community, which I truly want to be. Like, I'm truly better in person than on like a screen typing and stuff like that. I, like you, am a physical person. I like to garden. I do physical labor. I'm an electrician. I do high industrial work, and that's really, I'm in my element when it comes to physical labor. I'm not shy about that. I've even built my own computer. So building my own computers, using my hands in that way. And I have many other hobbies that really combine that. So I found my niche in that way. Like, I found that being in community and advocating for things to be physical, that's something that people can do, is find what calls to you. It's either like kinesthetic is my thing. I'm really a biodynamic person. Like, I find myself using my body more often to express myself. And a lot of times when it comes to other people that are very visual, when they have, let's just say, if people want to see things, they'll actually say, okay, I see you in that way. Or is they want to produce a book with a lot of pictures, and or instead of a book, it's like a video presentation. And for some people, it's more auditory. So they'll spend time writing a lecture, or they'll do a lot of writing columns so that they can write. And so when it comes to audio, they can do music, they can do different ways of, promoting a podcast or creating a newscast in some way. And for that, there's also the next step down. There's like, okay, how do I help someone? If I like audio, and if I like music, but I don't know how to certainly do all those things, you say, hey, can I help you? Can I apprentice you? I'm really interested in what you do a lot of the times, and can I help you in any way I can? And I figure that's just one step further, is just reaching out to that, connecting with people. And a lot of times it was just like, hey, like, I like doing this. I said yes to helping out a lot of people that I know, and on technology, and it's been profitable for me. I feel like, I would say valuable for me. And a lot
mm,
of times it. it really makes me grow, and that's really where I see the value in connection, and as well as learning things that I, that I, again, I'm not like the arbiter of technology. I feel like there's a lot of things that I don't know, and I'm learning things every day.
That reminds me, after our interview, I got a technological question for you. Maybe you
All
can help
right.
me out. But while you were talking about money, and this is a little bit of a tangent, but I want to show
Okay.
you this coin my friend gave
Interesting.
me. And what it is like, this was like I think it was a coal mining company
Okay.
or something like that, where if you work for them, you know, they give you this token instead of your paycheck. And with this
Yeah.
token, you can buy food at the store owned by the same people who make this coin. In a lot of ways, like it is a type of slavery. And that's sort of the problem with money, that yeah, we need it to do what we want to do. Like if I want to buy these headphones and I want this microphone to talk to people, I need some money to buy those things. And so there's really not in a simple way. There are some creative things people do, but I still need to find a way to make the money, even though
Mm-hmm.
because I'm stuck. These guys got me, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm still owned by them, and so that's the tricky part. That's what the battle is understanding that. Then we try to find ways to leverage these coins. We're like, okay, what if we get a bunch of these coins and we trade them with only each other, or we
Right.
make a big pile of them and we use that to stand on it and jump over the wall or something.
Yeah.
Some creative way to use these
Exactly.
fucking
Yeah.
things instead of letting them be our death and die just being like my last piece of bread.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so
You
it's a
said it
tricky
perfectly.
it's a tricky balance, right?
Yeah, that balance is very difficult when it comes to many things. It's like a simple thing. Like a lot of times, it's like, okay, you can't see the forest through the trees, or the trees through the forest. I forget how it really goes.
Hmm.
So when it comes to like, oh, like that's slavery, like don't love money, like, that's like, being like, you don't want to be greedy, you don't be egotistical, you don't want to seek for money, because, one, it's a slavery coin, two, it's something that, is enslaving people, and creating a lot of poverty in the way, and creating this wealth balance, imbalance. Yet at the same time, people have been putting themselves, like, there are no real, like, there are a lot of poor people doing a lot of this stuff. Like, we will do this for free for the rest of our lives if it has to happen. But it wouldn't suck if we had some money on top of it, because that's a lot of times, like, people are still working through the revolution when it comes to a lot of this. And there's money to be had, I figured, at the same time. Well, when I say money to be had, it's not like, an opportunity to get money. There's a need to give back. I feel like there's a lot of times people don't understand how much a dollar goes to some people. And again, going back to, some people do subscription programs, hell, I, I've done a couple subscription programs myself, and it means a lot to when I hear that second hour, or that extra piece of content on Patreon or Subscribestar in some cases. And to getting out of that, it's like a, if one sees value, as really what I'm getting at. It's like someone's time and attention is enough that Facebook, Instagram, and all these other corporations want that time and attention. And so that's pretty much what they value. Why don't we value it in such a way where I want to go and say, and give my time in a community of people. If I spend enough time growing plants, I would actually value the food I'm actually eating if I grew it, kind of thing. I'm spending a lot more time and attention on the things that potentially would make me feel better instead of eating a lot of this, a lot of the inorganic, and, or should say, non-nutritional dense foods. If I grow more nutritional dense foods, I'd obviously feel a lot happy and appreciate it more. If I had a little bit more abundance in that way, like if I grew a lot of this stuff, I could give it out instead of money. Like I could help the
And
homeless in
also
some cases.
you're giving that value to people that deserve it, like you were saying, the
Right.
podcasters. I've got subscriptions on several podcasts just because I appreciate so much what
Mm-hmm.
podcaster brought to me for free, that eventually I'm like, all right, I got to do the paid subscription for a while, because now that guy's job, he's not working at the post office, or he's not a police officer. He's able to
Right.
get out of the mainstream type jobs and do something that's actually
Exactly.
beneficial to the world. So by using this coin and giving him the some of the slave money, it's like better than giving it back to the bosses.
Right.
And so and I think the other part is bringing it back around to what we were talking before, is there's a battle going on, right? We're in a war. It's a spiritual war. It's a spiritual battle, but there's multiple fronts in any battle. You know, like you read about World War II, and there's Eastern Front, the Western Front. Well, we got the real world front right now, like trying to get into a store and tell them, no, I'm not putting something on my face,
Hmm.
or no, I'm not going to social distance from my own family or whatever. Um, and then we got the other front, which is the technological front. And if we're not
Yeah.
in there putting our voice out at all, we're just getting blown away on that front because the media is totally owned and controlled by the same people who own the coins.
Yeah. It's casino money.
Yep.
Playing their games, and it only matters if they win. The house always wins
Well,
in
they
that
have,
case.
they control it all, right? I mean,
The money, it does, and it's slowly. I feel it's incrementally moving. Moving faster, slower. It comes perspectively. I feel like if you're in it with the thickets, at the front lines, a lot of people say, you got to be at the front lines of things, and that's either in the digital war, the spiritual war, the physical war. You see it every if you're looking in the right places, you can see it every day. A lot of the stuff around the world, it's happening. And just in smaller increments, I'm just like, okay, look, I hear the thing that happened in Australia at that tennis opening, people booing. I'm like, oh, okay, getting my hopes up in that way. Hopes or motivation. Okay, maybe I'll go out there and actually donate to some Australian people this time. Okay, go you know, seeing if people really respond well to this kind of stuff, because I like I can't just go out and give all my money in some cases. Like for instance, like during the initial opening of I should say lockdown, not opening. During the
the
initial
closing,
lockdown, the closing of society,
yeah,
I, I
closing
had I
down
had
of life.
I fell down on hard times actually. Like I realized I'm like, well shit, I can't like it just had to be honest, like the job that I had was essential and they let me still work, but I still had like I'm like, well shit, I can't pay all this stuff. Like it just all of a sudden like came to a head for me and I fell on hard times and I just decided to I had to unsubscribe from a lot of the subscriptions that I had, and I had to stop doing a lot of the extracurricular activities and just stop. Okay, look, I'm gonna have to stop for a while. I'm not going to all these events and stuff like that. That's good. I can save my time and save my money. And I had to focus, and there was really nothing else to do. And I lo and behold had joined Mark Passio's
The true
how to become the
media,
true media
yeah.
course right around that time, and I'm like, perfect. And it worked out. So I feel like that really means a
It
lot
kind
to
of
me too.
grounded you and kept you
Yeah,
home.
it really kept me home on that, and shot me forward, because I also just got a new computer. I got the better version, I got the faster version, I got all these things, and it really shot me and refined me into a way to where I can shoot up into that way. And it laid out itself in a very systematic way, and it benefited me more than I can imagine and more than I know. I feel like that you know going off into a slight tangent is just the thing that goes off with technology. Learning for me had come with a lot of interaction. It's not like I read a book like that used to be old technology stuff. It's still relevant. A lot of this stuff is, you know, many books have taught me a lot of things. I've maybe read a handful of books, but I've listened to audiobooks and I've read people's work. I've listened to people live. And a lot of this new is new mixed media stuff. And mixed media is essentially, it's not media like the news media. It's more like median, like if I'm using acrylics with watercolor or clay with paint, and a lot of that is creative play. I can say, okay, I made a book in an ebook, and I'm actually going to record myself on live, or I'm going to say, invite people to my home. They can come and watch me, and I can read it every so often, and then produce that as a sort of podcast. And that's like a mixed media thing. You're reaching people online, you're reaching people here at home, and you're doing what you want to do. And a lot of that, I really do appreciate the to what you said though, tying it all together, is that, let's just say if I gave someone that one coin that you were showing me, and that person decided to do that, I'm gonna start saying, okay, look, you've gave me enough of this time and enough of this effort. I'm gonna start making that book that I've always wanted to make, and that gets that person. I truly love that part
Like
where,
spiritual currency when you know realizing how much work and effort like Mark Passio put into his show and his
yeah,
effort even to the point of getting himself all worked up and frustrated, and I'm like, How much effort have I put into things? Have I put that much
Hmm.
focus and energy and dedication into what I'm trying to do? And then it's like, okay, that's a challenge. And so it pushed me to try a lot harder. And I've had a few of my friends comment that the things I did and said and went online and did a live video or something inspired them to do something. And they're like, I'm really glad you did that because I might not have done what I did. And so I always think of it like, stop being a wallflower, you know?
Yeah.
Like if you're at the dance and everybody's just standing up against the wall, nobody
Yep.
wants to get out on the dance floor. Somebody's got to be the brave one to just get out there and start doing something silly and be like, I don't
Yeah.
care if I look silly.
Right.
So a lot of times I've tried to do that with, that's what I'm trying to do with these, interviews and videos I make. I just start talking, and every time you do it, you get a little better at it, and I think it encourages other people to do the same. And I think that's like spiritual currency. You put it out there, and then that inspiration goes on to the next person.
Absolutely.
And we kind of reflect off each other, right?
Yeah, and it's truly inspiring to see you do this, and like just to see that a couple people out of the true media class have noticed me, and like, this guy, little old me. I'm like, who am I? Can actually inspire others to do what you're doing, and or to reach out to me. And I feel like you're inspiring me, and I feel like that's something that I truly want to do. That's why I joined the course, and why I feel that this is very significant, what we're dealing with. And not for nothing, if anyone's actually starting to listen to this or watch this and says, you know, and there's got to be something out there, like this doesn't seem right, like a lot of the things that have been going on, it's not like, okay, all the things that have been in the past, okay, put that to the side. What's actually happening now? What actually is happening now? Okay, I can't go out and see my friends because they're in this sort of mindset that there's something that might affect them from me if I don't wear this cloth over my face, if I won't wear this diaper over my face. So if I connect that, I'm like, oh, okay, so that makes sense. Okay, let's just put that down. Oh, what happened here? All these people are yelling and screaming about this one governor that put all these people in nursing homes. Oh, they said that it increased the numbers, or he didn't tell the whole truth. Oh, then all that happens all the time. People don't just say that. No, they're like, I think more people are starting to say, wait, that doesn't make sense, and they're making a ruckus about it. And I feel like there's got to be something that really connects people to, like, okay, that really is starting to pull me in this direction about the masks, and no, this one's about to pull me about the vaccines. And instead of all this corona set, hey, why don't we just talk about, okay, this guy talked about gardening, this guy talked about freedom cells, you talked about currency. That really drives me to go and learn more about that. You can learn more about that. Go learn more about what happens in the Federal Reserve. Go learn about what
Yeah.
happened with the stock market, with all these different financial currencies. What maybe we can actually step over the dollar, we'll step over Federal Reserve notes and fiat money, and seeing that there's other things like cryptocurrencies, or not even money at the same time, just a barter trade, or even um, they have greenback dollars, or out like what do they call it? Ithaca hours, other things like that really make sense. And a lot of times, that has made sense. And going back to a more primitive way, away from technology, for instance, instead of going towards technology with cryptocurrency and algorithms and other things. So like it's a dual spread. What's being going on for so long is no longer working, and many people I see in my eyes are waking up to that, and they're saying, well, hold on, let's see if there's something else we can do.
I hope you're right. I tend to be a little bit skeptical about the idea that, you know, people are turning around and waking up on the
Hmm.
larger scheme of things because, from my perspective, I see so much of the vast majority that just seem totally, in the dark in a way, because I can see how they're still concentrated and reacting to the mainstream narrative, what's going on in the news or what's going on the news channels. And when I like go into a workplace, for instance, I'm listening, and what people are saying, what they're talking about, just shows that even if I bring up a subject, they might kind of hear me a little bit. Like I bring up 9/11 a lot because that's an easy subject,
Hmm.
and people are generally pretty skeptical about 9/11. That I talk to in a lot of circles, and then but on the other hand, they're still they don't get the deeper issue at all. Like they're still going to be arguing
Yeah.
about who's going to be the next best president ruler,
Right. Right.
and so from my point of view, I'm like that's one thing I really agree with Mark on, that I think until people understand the spiritual war,
Mm-hmm.
until they understand the spiritual battle, that that it matters what we do, and that we can't be part of stealing at all, to be good
Right.
people. We're really not being good people. Even I myself, like I'm trying to be better, but I'm still like in a lot of ways not a good person. I'm still part of a lot of
Mm-hmm.
things that I shouldn't be part of, you
Yeah.
know?
Being in a world where it's dualistic and having an occupation or a livelihood potentially, even myself, it's a double-edged sword. A lot of the things that happen, go about what Mark said, especially too, like what you're saying is a lot of people either just don't care or they don't have enough will. And so those two aspects is really a deep set of knowledge that either people either haven't recognized or aren't willing to recognize. So the things that are around us, and like all this information is available. So a lot of this stuff deals with the stuff on the internet, and books are still a thing, so people can read. It's available. So that's all I'm really saying. And I've noticed, yeah, there's a lot of people that aren't really willing to go within themselves and to be wrong, to just acknowledge, hey, look, there is something going on, and I either haven't recognized this or they're being suppressed in some way. So it's like, what are some of those early on in what Mark was talking about in his podcast? If people haven't recognized this, it's in the very early parts of his podcast. It talks about barriers to self-realization and utilizing the will. And it's like what Mark was saying. It's like that I keep hearing people either you know you know liking a subject and liking, say, a topic that one of us talked about, to the point where it's like, I like that, I understand what you're saying, but I'm not willing to go any further. Like, their minds aren't really ready, or they're split in such a way within themselves, and that takes a lot out of them. So, like, for instance, I didn't really initially like the way certain things were said, the way that people looked, or the way that it was presented. I had to really, stop a lot of that nonsense in my head and make sense of what the person was saying, what Mark was saying, what anyone pretty much says. And a lot of that came with curiosity and a deep need to understand, because of my upbringing. It could have been the level of which I was screwed over in some cases. I never really say it was one thing. I usually say it's one thing that led to another, because a lot of that stuff deals with my entire life,
Mm-hmm.
and getting to a point of saying, okay, this is what people need to do. And it's a lot of times, yeah, I could be hard fast and say, this is what you need to do. And there's a lot of that out there. And what I'm saying is finding out the sort of flavor, if you were to say, what flavor is there for you to do, and finding that for yourself. And that's really where I'll say is, a lot of times, the technology out there is scary enough to say, yeah, like it's really getting messed up out there. Yet the way in which we can combat that is, again, a flavor of which people are coming at. And it goes, it goes back of saying, okay, where people are at is where people are at, and I can meet them. It's like you said, a subject that people are most common with is 9/11, and you're meeting people where they're at, where they'll be a little bit more responsive and saying, well, what do you mean the Federal Reserve? I know nothing about it. And it's like, because I read this in a book and I had to spend the time. Like, someone will come up to me, and I'll start talking to them. For instance, a friend of mine, and the person has no idea about a certain subject, and I'll start talking about it. He'll be like, so tell me more about this, and I'm like, hold on, so you want me to distill 9 hours and
Yeah.
potentially four different books just to lay it on you in the next 5 seconds? And so, like, I just, like, I can't, like, I that's a lot of another full form of energy. So again, going back on another tangent, was, if I were to say, take all those 9 hours, learn what I learned from those books, and present that in a sort of podcast stream, I could just say, read this, go on my website. It's all there.
And
It's all
that
there.
makes a huge difference, because that is the truth of it. And I realize that I've kind of screwed up with my own family in a lot of ways,
Mm.
and my own kids, because a lot of times I'm reacting to something I just listened to or just watched, and I start spouting off about it, and they want to react to it and be like, "Oh, that's a fringe theory, that's a conspiracy theory, that's something that's far out." And it's like it wasn't like I presented to them in the 9-hour fashion where we started at the beginning and we explained the nature of reality, and then we worked our way up to morals, and then we talk about the Federal Reserve and all these other things. This all part of this whole amalgamation, or compound account of all this stuff you've had to study and learn
Yeah.
about. And people want, a lot of times I get in that trap where I'm talking to someone and they say, okay, well then tell me how they do it then.
Right.
They just want a quick answer. I'm I realize I can't get trapped in that, because if you
Yeah.
try
It's
to just
mental
spit it out,
gymnastics.
it's gonna make it easy for them to shoot you down. They're like, no, 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 it can't be like that. Put their guns
Yeah.
away. Problem solved. But if you're saying, if you take your time and make 9-hour presentation, which I've made way more than 9 hours of presentations, and some people have
Especially.
actually taken the time to watch a lot of it, if not all of it, and who knows how much effect that might have. So I guess on
Hmm.
the brighter side of things, we'll end it with kind of like, I mean, I could say I was about 40 when I really started understanding what the word freedom really means and thinking about it in a different way, and starting to understand natural law. And so up until 40, between the age of 20 and 40, that's like 20 years of
Right.
being pretty damn in the dark, you know? And that's, I got to say, there's a lot of people out there that, from my point of view now, are in the dark. But that doesn't mean that they can't reach where I did, the realization point, and turn around, because I realized, and if I did, then other people can too. And so I think, well, you're right. We just have to meet them where they're at, ask a lot of questions, stay balanced, keep a foot in both worlds, and keep fighting the battle on both fronts, or all fronts, and be creative and don't give up. Anything else you can add before we close up?
No, I wholeheartedly agree, and I really feel that people just can need to be, focused. That's another thing. Staying focused on a lot of the true work out there, being truth seekers, and instead of really feeling that there needs to be a truth. A lot of times, that's another thing to establish is being seeking the truth is like guiding yourself on what is reality. A lot of times we like can be fixated on that, that quick and dirty, like, oh, I heard this in the news, but really, like, sussing it out and establishing a real a reality. And I feel like that, again, both get what you can from the spirit and bring it down to earth, and keeping your feet rooted in the earth and staying grounded in truth.
Thanks, Nathan. Wise words, I
Thank you.
appreciate you hanging out with me tonight, and coming to represent the
Yeah,
world of technology and bring some positive notes on that end. And I really appreciate that, because it helps me too, because I do battle with this issue of technology and how much time to spend in front of it.
absolutely,
so
absolutely.
so yeah, good advice for me too. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think we'll close it up, and we'll have to
All
have
right.
another chat. And thanks so much for being on my show.
You're
Appreciate it.
welcome. Thank you very much, Chris. Take
All
good
right.
care.